this is a special chance to introduce, your, company called Maark Audio Loudspeakers Limited, and let us explain your background as engineering as well.
So, from 1999 to about 2004, I was building components for Bandor and for E.J. Jordan, who are full-range speaker manufacturers, no longer in business. And towards around 2003, I designed the Jordan JXR6HD driver for and on behalf of Jordan. And when Jordan was sold to a Swedish company the following year, it left me free to take up my own ideas about how full-range drivers should work. And I was free to follow my own path. And that's how modern Maark Audio was born, actually. But it is fair to say that the early part of Maark Audio was really was when I was 16 years old and first started working in full range as a student.
When you start the Maark Audios, brand name called Maark Audio.
So that's
what is your strategies, for the products?
You know me well, Norio-san. It's absolute concentration on the mechanical properties of transducers. The traditional full-range driver design is very old and has not seen any real development. So I set out to produce a far more mechanically efficient driver system which can handle more power, can deliver a base load, will do so with more controlled levels of distortion, and at the same time increase the actual net usable frequency range, and also to have a wider dispersion pattern. And that has given birth to the long stroke, low mass, wide dispersion driver that many Japanese end users know today.
You're saying for example, long strokes and the wider dispersions and the low distortion. That is based on the very accurate movement, and so that coming from your mechanical engineering basis, I feel.
Indeed. I used to have interesting discussions with my father because he was a Jaguar car enthusiast and a Jaguar engineer at one time, and in those days they relied on heavy mass but large power. I particularly enjoyed the Lotus car, which relied on low mass and a high power to weight ratio. So for those mechanical engineers in Japan, if they take a look at a Maark Audio driver, they will recognize its history, its engineering history from Lotus cars.
Colin Chapman.
Because this is the present situation for Maark Audio drivers, and we will continue to develop drivers with even lower mass and less moving components and greater strokes and wider dispersion, and it's an engineer's dream, of course, to do this.
How you consider, what kind of the the type of driver is fit to the this times
yes, for the ultimate project. And so we needed a driver that would adapt to many different types of box, and also, importantly, we needed a driver that could be powered by different types of amplifier.
As well.
Really important. And we also needed a driver that will be reliable in service. So it must have a reasonably strong suspension system, because some of the users will want to maybe use in larger rooms and maybe at higher power. Others will want to use maybe as desktop, near field, and use small power. This is a big variety of service condition for a driver. And of course the driver is only small, sort of less than 100 millimeters. In fact, there we go. You know, it's you can see, it is a, you know, it's a small driver. So the first thing I wanted to do is to make sure that we continue to use the famous Mark Audio's long stroke system. It's very long stroke. Okay, because we know that our Mark Audio users wish us to retain the character and the philosophy of our work. So this driver keeps that and continues it. For those customers that do want to play a bit loud, it does have the long stroke. It does maintain our custom underhung suspension. And I had to think about what resonance frequency would most customers expect from this size of driver, and also their expectation for reliable service, and also expectation on driver matching. As an engineer, I pay very close attention to driver matching. So
both drivers.
That's right. So when those drivers arrive in the MOOC, they will be within
same.
They will be very close. Their resonance frequency, the SPL, and their QTS, and all their major parameters will be very close, plus minus 2%. Typically, most commercial drivers are produced to plus minus 20%.
No.
But has never been. You know, this is not acceptable to me as a mechanical engineer. So a resonance frequency of 135 hertz is currently these are sample drivers. So we've built to 135 hertz. The final production we may adjust that according to need, but around 135 hertz for the whole production. So typically, for a transmission line box or for a horn or something similar, the low range output could go as low as 70 hertz or lower perhaps. For a bass reflex, for a bass reflex box, it could be maybe 100 hertz. There is room. So the driver has a good high total Q, so it will have reasonably good lower middle output. It won't go very low because it's a small driver, but the stroke is 4 millimeter. 4 millimeter this way and 4 millimeter that way. So total stroke depth, or X max, is 8 millimeter. That is a heavy load. Likely we will build in our famous arrestor, which protects the driver, probably set that to 3.5 millimeters. So total X max will be 7. That's very, very wide for a small driver. And the fact I can do that.
So for all of those, any careful point, they need to care when they build this speakers?
Yes. So ideally they should run the driver in. The ideal run-in period is 100 hours at low volume. But at least if most customers can give it 20 hours on low volume. This is important to allow the front suspension, which you can see is very, very, very soft. This is to allow that front suspension to gain the right amount of elasticity. Similarly with the rear suspension, which is the spider. Yeah. That needs regular variable music, not a square wave signal or any artificially generated signal. If the end users apply a signal generator to run these drivers in, the suspensions will memorize that signal, and then they will not operate fully. So light volume variable music for a few hours is necessary. The amplifier loading, these are 4 ohm drivers. Now for those customers who may have only 8 ohm amplifiers, don't worry, you can use a 4 ohm driver on nearly all 8 ohm amplifiers. If you have a particularly higher power amplifier, obviously you must exercise some care, because even though this is a quite strong driver, it's still a small driver. And I usually recommend putting on a 4 ohm resistor in the feed, in the plus feed in series to the driver, if you're using a larger amplifier, and that will create an 8 ohm load, and that adds a little bit of safety if you're using this driver on a larger amplifier. I can mention one other thing, which is very very useful, I hope, which is I'm not sure this will be published in the magazine, but the driver, sorry, I have to put my glasses on. The frequency response of the driver is very near flat for the mid-range. It has our trademark high lift. The reason for that is when the driver is on axis, you can get extra full range. But many customers, many end users, like to put the boxes slightly away from the listening position. When they do that, the response will flatten out. So end users have the choice of putting the box directly or angling like that, and they can adjust that range very simply to get their desired listening level. The cone is very shallow, so there will be wide dispersion, and even this small driver will fill a good sized room with music, at a decent volume.
Do you have any expectation? We made the speaker unit, collaborate to the stereo magazine.
Well, indeed. I mean, my hope is that stereo magazine end users will get involved and use these drivers and have fun, enjoy the boxes that come with them using their drivers. Have they made big boxes, small boxes? Have they simply used the kit? And to see what they actually do, to feed back. Tell me, tell you, come back and talk to us. Let us know what experience they've had. And this experience is very important, because as an engineer, I can be more efficient in my job when I have when I understand the experience of the user. You know, we learn from Japanese end users what they hope to see from us in the future.
From that point of view, you know, this collaboration makes many chance. Many people can really listen.
Absolutely.
The driver you know ideally think to make.
Indeed. It's very important. Japan, the great thing about Japan for me is the level of knowledge that many end users have, even beginners. In new people, young people, it's surprising the level of understanding that they have on loudspeaker systems. Japan is the only country really where the audio community, if you like, the Japan audio community, it's very large. In other countries they're smaller and their knowledge base is more limited. So for me, coming to Japan is entering heaven. And when I was a young boy, I think maybe 12 or 14 years of age, my father, who was a Jaguar guy, my father bought, this is going back 40 years or more, bought one of the first Toyota imports to the UK. And he bought a Toyota Crown 2.6 litre station wagon, bright yellow colour. I remember it to this day. And he put the car on his lift, on his car lift. I went underneath. Now he's an engineer. He's more creative than me on checking everything. And he found 0 faults on this Toyota. Now typically, at that time, a British manufactured car would have several faults, some problems.
Yes,
from the
I know that.
He could not find one single fault with this Toyota car. Not one production error.
That is the reason you said.
And he said to me, and I remember his words, he said, "Mark, my boy, my son, you are witnessing the death of the British motor industry." Because he knew from that day that Japanese skill in producing machinery, consumer goods, was really #1 in the world, actually, then and still today. He also bought a Suzuki 250 GT motorbike, two-stroke, with direct oil injection, and he sat on it. And again, we're going back 40 years, and he said, "Look, my boy, press the button, boom, boom, electric start." No British manufacturer had produced a motorbike at that time with electric start. You all had to break your legs trying to start it. And so you see, this is important. And this is the reason why I come to Japan so much, because I realised from the age of 12 that for an engineer, particularly a design engineer like me, who's making transducers in this case, that if you want to make a good product, you have to prove it in Japan. This is the country where you find out if your work is good, if your work is good, is your design good, will it succeed? If it succeeds in Japan, you've done your job. I've done my job. But I learned that from my father at a very early age. And what's interesting today is that
very good father.
It is. You know what's interesting today? What is interesting today? It is. You know, it's interesting today. If my father was alive, he would recognise that there are many proud British engineers and British assembly workers in Sunderland assembling Nissan cars in Sunderland, because they have adopted and learned the skills and practices.
Finally, could you make some message to the customers, for enjoying this project?
Well, I think so. Mostly to say to spend time experimenting and practicing with the drivers. The driver is only one part of a loudspeaker system,
It is.
and the pleasure is in making the box, tuning the box, damping inside the box,
Listening good sound.
finding a nice amplifier to go with the system, or adjusting the amplifier you have, or experimenting with cables. Also to really, once you've built your system, to sit down and, if you're a coffee drinker, enjoy the coffee and sit down and play some of your favourite music. Experiment, but also listen. Enjoy the time to listen. You see, an audio driver is a simple electromechanical device. It's not particularly complicated. And many people ask me and say, you're in the driver business or the audio business, and I go, no, more. No. I'm in the entertainment business. If this driver is doing its job properly, it must entertain stereo magazine readers. They must get pleasure from it when they listen to it. The great thing about a Mark audio driver is it's a relatively flexible driver. It can go on a smaller amplifier or a slightly bigger one. It can go on a solid state, or it can go on a tube amplifier. People have even fitted them in flower pots, and they sound pretty okay. So enjoy getting different effects from the driver. Changing the damping in the box, for example, or changing your cables, for example. There's many different things you can do. So you can get many months or even years of enjoying these drivers in different ways. And so that's my message to Stereo Magazine. And then tell us about it in December. Because that I can go away and think about what I need to make next.
That's good impact for you as well.
What next do you need me to make for the next step in the driver revolution, evolution, I should say.
I also feel they enjoy the process to build up their own speaker system.
Oh, completely, yes, absolutely.
Anyway, thank you very much for a long time.
Thank you indeed. Thanks very much.